Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Today, we are proud to host a very special conversation to unveil our improved certification framework created around the pillars of environmental, social, governance, and innovation. Our CEO, Diana Verdenieto, is joined by Positive Luxuries Managing Director, Amy Nelson-Bennett, Residence Camp, Technical Director at the Capitals Coalition, George Setaya, Head of Sustainability at the BSI, and Martin Townsend, Global Health for Sustainability and Circular Economy at the BSI. Before we start, I want to remind you that this webinar will be 45 minutes, including 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, so you can submit your questions anytime during the webinar through the Q&A box, and the panel will answer them at the end. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Claudia, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depends where you are in the world. It's a real honor to have such an incredible panel today. And, you know, our new improved framework has taken quite a bit of time, but finally we got there. So I would like to start actually with Martin. Martin, the BSI is a global leader in best practice and standardization. In your position and working with a myriad of companies in different verticals, categories, industry, at different stages in their sustainability journey, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in this space post-COVID?
What a great question to start with. I think I probably need to answer that question in two ways, I suppose, which is why now? So when we start to look at this sort of post-COVID world, why is sustainability more important now than it's ever been before? So I think we need to kind of understand that green future. How do we build back better? Doesn't matter where you are in the world. How can we come out of COVID better than we went into it? So I think we need to kind of talk about that. The second question, which I think is probably even more important, we've been talking about sustainability for 30, 40 years. We can go back to Brunton, we can even go back before then, but how do we actually make sure that we do something? And this is, I think, the great work that Positive Luxury have done, which is practical and makes things happen quicker than if we did nothing at all. So to kind of get under the skin of that a little bit, I think it's worthwhile taking us back to 2017, when the UK government did its 5-year risk assessment of concern. So picking up your point about COVID, the biggest risk that the UK government found when it was looking at the UK and worldwide was a pandemic. We had written down the fact that a pandemic was going to happen, yet we did nothing about it. We were all shocked, we were all confused, we were all kind of worried about what this future might look like. What we need to make sure we do for sustainability is exactly the same thing. We need to look at ourselves, we need to look at our supply chains, we need to look at our businesses, and we need to say to ourselves, how fragile are they? How can sustainability drive the change that we need to see? It's important that when we look forward, that we really think about the lessons we've learned from COVID, the uncertainties we see in the world. We really need to make sure we understand what those risks are. And the framework that we're going to be talking about today is a really good way of coming back better and being more successful. The other thing to add to that kind of list of things that we need to think about is the fact that we are coming to an end of a macroeconomic cycle, a 40-year macroeconomic cycle. That macroeconomic cycle started about 1980, bookended by Reagan and Thatcher, and where we are now in terms of that cycle means that we had a contract with society which was about a liberal global agenda, which was about ensuring that we had prosperity and jobs in exchange for light taxes and light regulation. That cycle is coming to the end. COVID is accelerating us thinking about what do we need to do differently to create a better contract with society to drive change. The other point to kind of say, and this is to kind of break out some of these ideas, I suppose, is citizen research is driving change. Mm-hmm. If we look at the people on this webinar today, the consumers who buy the products are no longer just consumers. They are shaping your business. They are your change agents for business. They are more curious, they're more informed, they're more vocal on social media than they have ever been before. That Generation Z basically align their values to company brands. And they will walk away if those brands are not doing the right thing. If those brands are not living those values, they will change. They will be disappointed. Generation Alpha have lived in a world where there has been only one call, which is about a change for a sustainable future. Those generations are driving society in terms of what's going on. The last point, I suppose, or one of the points I just want to kind of flag as well is, if I go back 20 years and I start to think about what was the world, and if I wanted to be green, was it possible? It was very expensive to be green. All the solutions weren't available. But where we are today, there are no excuses. You know, there is affordability in terms of the solutions, in terms of electric vehicles, in terms of plant-based diets, in terms of wind and solar solutions. You know, we're seeing a point where we're seeing electric vehicles push the combustion engine out of the transportation mobility issue. Solutions are now available, so there are less excuses in terms of why I should do something. And I think the other point to kind of flag is that when we talk about sustainability, we really do need to talk about a more holistic, integrated approach. You know, the work that Positive Luxury is doing, the work the framework is doing, is making sure we take a balanced approach. You know, when I look at corporate plans, when I look at what's included, sometimes we're very ambitious on environmental issues, but we're not always as ambitious on the social issues. How do we make sure that we have that real ambition to see ESG or ESJ, environment, social and justice, sit side by side to drive a sustainable future? So kind of my last point, I suppose, before I close, is the point, the fact that in the pandemic, we as society have changed. We need to make sure we make good use of that change in terms of understanding our supply chains, understanding what different looks like, understanding that technology and the transparency and the global agenda is driving us. So Industry 4.0 and COVID, I think, will be massive opportunities for us to really embrace change, understanding that our consumers are thinking differently, understanding technology is enabling our future. And actually, I suppose my closing comment really is, it doesn't matter how you've been affected. This is an opportunity to be more efficient, more effective, and really make sure your business is a resilient, successful business. And actually the ingredients are about thinking about different business models, cleaner technologies, and the resilience of your supply chains and your products and your services. That's my opening thoughts.
Well, that is pretty impressive. Great. You know, incredible points there. And you are so right. I mean, it's not a question to talk about sustainability and with an if. It's a question of when and the speed towards acceleration of actually implementing all of these things within businesses. So thank you so much for opening this panel with such incredible, rich thoughts. I'd like to introduce now our Managing Director, Amy. It is my absolute privilege to work with such an incredible, talented, you know, giving and smart woman. Amy has spent the last 25 years leading brands like Molton Brown and Clive Christian Group. Amy, in a few slides, I was wondering if you could explain what is the butterfly mark. This is not a test, by the way, and take us through the certification framework. Thank you.
Sure. I want to start I want to try to explain Positive Luxury by providing an analogy. So I'm going to use a sporting analogy. So Positive Luxury is a business. It's easiest to see us as a coach trying to prepare businesses, let's say, for the Olympics, if we can ever have them again. The ESG Plus framework that we're launching this week is really the exercise regime that we provide to our clients to help them get completely match fit. The businesses that we help are therefore, you know, they're world-class athletes once they get through our training regime. The butterfly mark is the gold medal. So it's the reward and the recognition that we grant to businesses who have successfully completed and passed our assessment framework. So coach, regime, athlete, and reward. Now, positive luxury is a very, very broad assessment framework, as Martin mentioned, but we have one very clear area of focus, and that is the world of luxury. And we do that because we think the luxury industry as a collective whole has an unparalleled opportunity to have an enormous impact on the world because of the profile of luxury brands. They're very, very attractive to consumers. They have massive global reputations. And we have an opportunity as a group to do something really amazing over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's why we focus on that. And it's in the luxury industry's interest, not just in terms of making a positive impact on the planet, but making a positive impact on their business. Because even now, when we measure the impact of businesses who've invested in sustainability, 2/3 of them see an economic benefit to their business within a 3 to 5 year span. Luxury businesses have got models that afford us the ability to invest in our businesses over that time span to see return. There we go. So this is the ESG plus framework. So not the system itself, but the 4 pillars that we look at. So we look at a broad number of areas across the environment. It's the most extensive part of the framework. We look at several different areas across what we would call social justice. We look at the governance that is increasing across the world that guides businesses' efforts in these areas. And then something, again, very, very unique to positive luxury is our focus on innovation. This is innovation in the process of sustainability, innovation in the technologies you may be introducing into your business, innovations in terms of the mindsets that you embed in your employees and your suppliers, and the ecosystem around your organization, which puts sustainable efforts at the forefront of your organization. And all of this sits on a very simple to use interface that allows a brand really an enormous toolkit that they can utilize while they're going through the assessment process to put a sustainability strategy at the heart of their entire business across every part of the organization. And because we focus on luxury, we do what luxury businesses are known for. We have a very tailored approach for our clients. So we have a lot of areas that we assess that would be common to all the businesses that we support, but businesses have also got differences. And so our assessment framework is tailored for each of these 8 verticals in which we operate. And the questions that we will look at and examine, the information that we would require from businesses will vary depending on their specific value chain. Now, we also tailor our assessment not just for luxury brands within each of these 8 verticals, we also support suppliers to luxury brands within each of these 8 verticals. And there are big businesses and there are small businesses, and their dependencies and their impact in terms of their behavior varies significantly between very large companies and some of the smaller, more niche businesses. And again, our assessment is varied to reflect that, and the weighting and scoring that is assigned to businesses going through the assessment varies depending on the potential impact that your business may have in different areas based on whether it's a very large global organization or a smaller, more specialist niche business. And for us, it's incredibly important for us to have really valuable partnerships like we have here today, 3 fantastic experts, Martin and George from BSI, Rosie representing Capital's Coalition, you can see the other sort of amazing organizations that we have worked with to build this framework. And we do this because we believe in the power of collaboration, but we also believe that the expertise that these different organizations bring to our assessment framework provides a robustness, a modernity, a degree of objectivity and independence that means the framework's not necessarily about our opinion. It is governed by guidelines, legislation, best practice from experts across all the different areas that we examine. And when there isn't legislation or a established best practice, we also look at more specialist certifications that businesses may have partnerships with, such as USDA Organic, Fair Trade International, the Leather Working Group, a lot of these different organizations. This is just a sample that, again, are another way for a business to provide a proof point of their sustainable efforts in different areas of their business. Those partnerships get a person to a place where if they were looking at all those areas and improving their efforts, they've hit what we would call a sort of minimum standard of sustainability that ensures you're making a positive impact on that business. And working with all our various partners ensures us that that assessment and the outcome of it, as I said, is fair, transparent, and based on tangible points of proof. The plus is the positive luxury element that we add on to it, which puts special weighting and special prominence to businesses that aren't just trying to hit an acceptable base standard, but who are looking to excel, who are looking to lead, who are driving innovation across the broad luxury sector within the field of sustainability. And for us, this is an area we see really growing and developing and rewarding, because we want businesses to not be de-risking themselves. We want them to be future-proofing themselves. And this approach of really leaning on innovation as a key driver ensures that. So when a business completes the assessment framework, there are two levels at which a person can be awarded the butterfly mark. If a business goes through those 4 pillars and gets to a 50% pass rate across each of the 4, then we award them a butterfly mark so that they can communicate to their employees, their suppliers, their business partners, their consumers, that they are a business that is committed to making a positive impact. For brands that go through the assessment framework and are really excelling, they're getting an 80% pass rate across each of those 4 pillars. That is what we consider to be excellent in sustainability. These are the businesses that are proving to us that they are going to be genuinely net zero by 2030, to give you an example just of what excellence looks like to us. They're making big, bold movements that are going to have an impact in the near term. Okay, I'm nearly done. I'll hand back to you, Diana. I just want to throw a couple more facts out there for people to think about. Again, reinforcing what Martin said, why is this important? Of all the life on Earth, we humans are 0.01% of it. But that little bit of life on Earth has had this impact over the last 100 years. So we have changed 75% of environments on land. And I think Rosie would probably back me up and say that not a lot of that change has been positive change. And in terms of marine environments, that little 0.01% has altered 2/3 of marine environments. So we've had quite an impact as a very small part of life on Earth. So we're at a stage, as Martin said, we're at the end of that 40-year economic cycle where we have a choice. Each of us has a choice within a business, can choose to be the cute tortoise in the left, or the even cuter, but much, much faster, much more impactful hare in the right. And essentially, positive luxury is a coach that is there to provide a framework and support that helps you if you want to be the type of business that is moving into the fast lane and making a positive impact right now.
Thank you so much, Amy. I love your slide. Your last slide, it's the cutest.
You know, you get people onto media these days with cute fuzzy animals. It works.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, you gave me a great cue because from biodiversity to a biodiversity expert. So it is my real honor to be here with you, Rosie. You have led the Impact Work Capital Coalition and has been one of our collaborators throughout this process. And I just wanted to ask you, what is the biggest change that you've seen post-COVID on sustainability, and what are the opportunities that you see in the near future? But also, I mean, if you can expand a little bit more specifically, like after obviously China Biodiversity Conference coming up. So yes, I mean, biodiversity, like we had an absolutely dreadful impact and not always obviously positive. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Diana, and thank you for having me here today. It's a great question because the impact of COVID, I think everyone on this call has felt the impact of COVID unquestionably, and it's been tragic. But there are some positive learnings we can take from this as well. And picking up on some of the things that Martin actually said in the introduction, when he talked about it's critical for us to understand our risks and to respond to them in order to build back better. And if you look at, as he said, Generation Z, their awareness and their demands, the main thing I would say here is there's a huge increase in awareness on our connection with biodiversity and the increase in risk of zoonotic diseases, which many of us might not have even known the term zoonotic 12 months ago, but we sure do now. And that is incredible because the coalition launched some biodiversity guidance primarily aimed at corporates last year. And that had been a 3-year process to develop. We went through extensive stakeholder engagement where the main outcome when we said, what do you need from biodiversity guidance, was we need to better understand our connection with biodiversity. There are a lot of corporates out there saying, we kind of know it's important and we know need to do something, but we don't understand our relationship with biodiversity. We don't understand why it's important and what action we can take. Well, I think that everyone, as I said, has felt the impact on their lives and their well-being down that impact chain. If you look back, it's very likely that has come from human impact on biodiversity. And so that raising of awareness gives us a huge opportunity to move forward, particularly here today, this industry, to collaborate and move forward and manage our impacts better. And I would say that those businesses who are less resilient to these changes and are not managing their impacts and their risks are not going to be here in the long run. And I think this is what Amy was saying here about it's not just about positive impact on planet, it's about positive impact on your business. And I think that the key to effectively managing our impacts on biodiversity is collaboration. And we can see that on the panel here and on the attendees on the webinar is just a great example of collaboration in action. And this butterfly certification has been developed through collaboration and it will be applied through collaboration. And one of the key things I would say with something like this is to see it not as a test, that this is a framework to support and help you to take action. And actually, at the start line, if you're looking at the tortoise and the hare, it doesn't kind of need to be either or. And actually quite often it can be seen as a barrier, that kind of hare that, oh, I need to move into the fast lane and take huge leaps. If that is scaring anyone on the call today, I would say take your first step as a tortoise and work up towards being a hare. And Positive Luxury are here to support you in doing that. And this framework is fantastic in the questions it asks and it poses, really can support businesses to take action. So see it as a useful tool. There's great opportunity there from the awareness that has been raised, not just by people on this call, right, because they have a level of awareness, but people beyond this call. Awareness has been raised globally. And yes, there are certainly challenges presented by COVID. You know, a lot of businesses are struggling financially, economically, and that can be hard then to prioritize where to put your resources. But it has definitely shown us that businesses need to be resilient and they need to take action, and there absolutely is a connection with the impact on biodiversity, and there lies a huge opportunity for collaboration and for us to move forward in the impact we can have as an industry.
Thank you so much, Rosie. It's always great to speak with you because you're so knowledgeable about the whole biodiversity side and specifically on the impact zone, as we call it. And I'd like to turn to George. I mean, George has been working with the team absolutely tireless to actually get this assessment done. It's taken months, and we cannot be more grateful for all your work and the brain power and the enthusiasm. So, George, what part of the process you enjoyed the most? You must not say the dog, so over to you.
It is the dog, definitely. No, look, thank you, Diana. That's very kind. And I mean, first of all, can I just say, you know, it's been absolutely great working with you and the team at Positive Luxury. I'm really proud. I think we're all really proud of what we've managed to do together. This new framework that we've now put in place, it's come a long way. I think it's come a long way. And personally, from a BSI perspective, I'm really happy that we've been able to be involved and bring our knowledge in best practice and international standards, particularly in the areas related to ESG related topics. So, you know, really proud and you know, really enjoyed working with you to do it. I think, look, there's always challenges when you look to create an assessment of this sort. The main ones I've found, and we certainly faced it here, was getting the right balance between what we needed to cover, but keeping it simple, and keeping it something that we can use as a tool to measure companies against the other. It needs to be consistent and simple, but also something that's usable and useful for the user. I mean, as Rosie was saying, that was the main focus, something that we can use to compare, but also is a useful tool for those companies going through the assessment. So yeah, I think, look, we've certainly faced this challenge, but what we got to together, I think, is a really good compromise, and it sets the bar now for what organizations need to be doing in this area and drives the type of change the type of ambitious change that we're working towards. And I think as well, through incorporating international best practices, which is what we did, it also adds that level of objectivity. And I think, you know, setting what good looks like in a cross-sector manner, you know, this isn't just about one industry, it's about what good looks like across a number of sectors, and pushing the luxury industry to meet that. I think that's where we've got to, which is really great. Another point, and you know, Amy mentioned it earlier, is that something really important about this framework is that it's not meant to stand still. It's designed, and the way we've designed it is so that it will evolve, and so it will learn and take into account feedback and inputs as more and more people do the assessment. So we've built it purposely in that way, and I think that's really important for a quickly changing and adaptive world as we live in. So yeah, I mean, it's not just another sustainability accreditation, it's something much more than that. And so yeah, look, really enjoyed being part of it, really proud of what we got to. And I mean, the other thing is I learned a lot personally. I'm by no means an expert in the industry itself, and I think, you know, I learned a lot about the challenges and the specific topics that the luxury industry faces. And I think that it kind of comes to the point that I wanted to reinforce the point that Rosie was just making around collaboration. I think what your knowledge and Positive Luxury's deep knowledge in the luxury industry and the challenges they face, Rosie and Capital Coalition's deep knowledge in certain areas such as biodiversity and the other partners, and our knowledge in cross-sector best practices and standards, I think that combination of those strengths that we've brought together to create this has really been part of why I think it's such a successful and hopefully will be a groundbreaking type of framework. And yeah, as what Rosie was saying, that sort of collaboration I think is what is needed. It's what's needed to drive this ambitious change, and that's what this scheme is all about. It's all about, you know, we've collaborated to make it, and we'll all be collaborating with all the users of the framework going forward. And that's really, you know, that's the way to address the pressing issues that we all face. So yeah, look, for the fourth time, I guess, really enjoyed it, really proud of what we've done, but really also looking forward to hearing what people have to say, and as people go through the assessment, getting their feedback on it as well.
Thank you so much, George. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. And, you know, we have learned a lot about standards and the fact that you know pretty much all the standards by heart, which is actually quite amazing. And so, yeah, what is BA 104? Okay, let me tell you about that. I mean, it's been actually, you know, a both ways conversation. So thank you so much for all your work. It's been fantastic. And also there's more people that has collaborated also into putting all this together, in terms of, we have done consultations with Accenture, with MIT, with Stanford, with Cambridge Sustainability Industry, and so the list go on, and we could not have everybody here. So, you know, but you can go to the website and find out who else is on our Sustainability Council as well. The last question, I'd like to start with Rosie, if I may. What piece of advice would you give to people and businesses who want to start into the sustainability journey? Like you said earlier, you know, what are these first steps? And I'd like to ask then this question to George. So Rosie, if you want to kickstart that, would be great. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, I think echoing what I said earlier, I speak to a lot of companies every day who are either just getting started or are quite mature in their assessment. Just get started, and don't be afraid that some of your peers or other organizations have the answers or have some secret source of data that you don't have. It's not the case. And even those with a really small budget, in fact, I would say organizations I've seen who don't have a big fancy consultancy and a glossy report are actually doing, no one shoot me here, but better work on the ground. You know, they're really in touch with the context of their business. And I'd say have confidence that you have the knowledge that is required of your business to get started and make a difference. It's not about doing a perfect assessment. It's about learning more about your organization, the connection with ESG, and taking some steps forward. So have a go, do the best you can, and that is amazing in itself.
Thank you so much, Rosie. George.
Yeah, no, and building on that, I think there's a number of small things that you can do and that will have a big impact. And I think, you know, one of the things we're definitely suggesting is understand do that kind of materiality impact assessment to understand what those things are is a really important first step. But there's simple stuff. I mean, there's you know, do you have the right sustainability objectives in place? Something as simple as that. You might have some, but are they the right ones that's relative to the business? And you know, have you got a simple, clear sustainability policy that sets out your ambition? And you know, I think if you can be really clear on that and really clear what you're aiming to and driving towards, then everything kind of follows down. And it's so easy to get it wrong when you don't have that first step in place. So yeah, advice to people who are starting out and want to do something small. I mean, just focus on getting those that objectives, that policy, that sort of commitment clearly right, and make sure it flows down to all the activities that you're doing on the ground going forward.
Thank you very much. And Amy, what would be your advice?
Apart from, I really agree with Rosie, get started. You know, the sooner you get started, the less daunting anything like this is, and it's not as scary as people think it is. The advice for me would be, please don't see sustainability or treat it as a marketing strategy. Don't treat ESG Plus as an HR strategy. If you really want to do this and get the greatest benefit for your business and the people that work in it and work with you, the communities that you operate in, it needs to be embedded into your culture across every function that you have in your business. And we really believe that you have to take a sort of horizontal approach rather than a vertical one, which sort of compartmentalizes it over in the corner and makes people feel like you're perhaps closer to ticking the boxes than really putting it at the heart of your business.
Thank you, Amy. Martin, last word. What's your piece of advice?
This is always difficult when it comes last, isn't it? I think everything that everybody said, I agree with, but I'd also add something, which is, this is about, picking up what George was talking about. Standards are best practice. What we have done very carefully and very thoughtfully is collected best practice for people to assist them to improve. So it goes back to what I started with, I suppose, is that this is a moment, this is an opportunity for people to think about how they can operate in a different world, how they can be more efficient and more effective. And I think when you start to look at some of the standards that make up the framework, don't see it as a cost, see it as an opportunity. See it as an opportunity to think about your waste stream, to think about your business models in terms of circularity, to think about the impact you have. And there's the point that Amy said, which is, think about the culture of the organization you're trying to create, the social capital, the human capital within your business, but actually then use that to your best advantage to actually be proud and to tell your shareholders, your stakeholders of the great work you're doing. So I suppose the essence of what we've done is we've given you the best start you possibly could do. We've given you that free consultancy advice by getting best practice together. The ambition now needs to come from your clients, the people on this call, to do something about it. And, there should be no excuses now. We've talked about Industry 4.0, we talked about the next macroeconomic age. It's now down to people's passion, ambition to take the work that you've done and actually do something about it. And so I think I pick up on Amy's point, which is we've done the hard work. Now you need to actually think about it yourself and actually pick up the gauntlet and actually drive change in your respective companies.
Thank you so much, Martin. And now let's jump onto the Q&A. And for the kind of sake of time, I'm gonna kind of trying to answer or ask a few questions together. There is, okay, first question. Should one see you as the butterfly mark as the B Corp for luxury products? And also the other question is this an international label or is just British based? So I don't know who would like to answer this.
I can probably answer both of them pretty quickly. Positive Luxury, while we are based in Britain, although you wouldn't know it from Diana's and my accents, we certify businesses whose headquarters are based in about 25 countries globally. And obviously those businesses have operations and supply chains and sales outlets all over the world. So we are very much a global organization in terms of the clients that we support and the perspective that we take when we're looking at our framework. Are we the B Corp for luxury products? I mean, the positive luxury assessment is a very broad assessment in that it looks across ESG and innovation. It is a very rich, thorough, well-substantiated certification. And what we focus on is the unique elements that are more common in the luxury industry. So you don't hear an industry so commonly using words like rare ingredients, craftsmanship, unusual materials. If you think about luxury goods and services, the focus on quality, the focus on beauty and aesthetic, but also the risk that could possibly be associated with delivering all those, there are some very specific things that a person needs to understand and be able to support when you're working within the luxury industry. And whether that makes us different from anybody, whether that's a comparison to another certifier, I don't know, but within the luxury industry, that's what we try to focus on, is really understanding brands who are based on that aesthetic, creative quality proposition and want to become sustainable. We need to help them find a way to do that without compromising those other elements of their brand equity.
Thank you so much, Amy. And
Diana, Just to add on the international point as well. Again, you might not realise it from the title, but BSI is, although it's British Standards Institute, we're also international as well. And the standards and the best practices that are built into the butterfly mark framework are international best practices. They're not just British best practices. They're they're from international standards or different areas and topics across the world. So yeah, it's a bit like your accents. Like you'd be excused for not realizing that the British standards are not just British, but we do operate around the world and provide the best practices very much from around the world as well.
I like that. Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better about my accent. But also, I always say the British Standard Institute is the guys that actually do the ISO certification, which is a very well-known global standard. So thank you very much for that, George. A question for Martin. How do you react? How do you react to what the recently broadcasted documentary on Netflix, Seaspiracy, revealed? Where accreditations organizations who supported identify the more sustainable brands are rather than a marketing strategy that truly policing compliance towards being sustainable. So Martin, over to you.
Well, a great question. I kind of agree with the challenge that's being made, but I think to some extent that's slightly historic. So why I say that is that I think in our past, lots of organizations have marketed very effectively what they're doing or what they say they're doing, but the reality of their actual practice is somewhat different. And I think it's a comment that Forum for the Future, who was one of the people that you put up on one of the earlier slides, mentioned, which is we're now living in an age of transparency. And you might have said historically that you are going to do something in a corporate report, or a senior director or chairman might have stood up and said, we are going to do this, and then it hasn't been delivered. We now live in this world of beyond shareholder value, where information is much more available. And if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you will be held to account. And I think what we have created here is this process of transparency and audit to make sure that if people are trying to drive change, there is a transparency and honesty to it. So the comment that's been made is very true. I think companies have in the past have said they're going to do something and they're not delivered, and it's a marketing strategy. We now live in a world where we need to be more accountable and we need to be more transparent in terms of the process of change we're making. And I think this framework is a great way of demonstrating that. And I think this is a time that, we also need to hold everybody to account internally, that if we're going to make change happen, we need a framework to improve. So I think, great question. I think we need to go beyond it, seeing it as a marketing strategy. We need to measure the outcomes that we achieve as a real value of the change we're trying to make.
I should know how to do this by now. Yeah, and I still make the same mistake. I was going to say that I don't really know how, but we got to 2:45 almost. So I just wanted to say thank you once again to Martin, to George, to Rosie, and to Amy for all the hard work, for the support, for the endless questions, for the late nights. And I'd like to actually pass it over to Claudia. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Rosie, Martin, George, Amy. Thank you for this inspiring webinar. If you are interested in knowing more about our updated framework or have any question, please contact us at hello@positiveluxury.com, and we'll be more than pleased to answer all your questions. Thank you again for your time today, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.